Hi, I'm Ella. I chose a New York Times article talking about the overturning of Roe v. Wade. And it's by the New York Times. It says why democracy hasn't settled the abortion question, I believe. Yes. And it's by Kate Zernick. And I chose this one because I think that the overturning of Roe v. Wade is one of the more prominent court decision cases. That's something that we talk about in our current events for this week. And it's one of the more prominent court cases because I think it really focuses on gender inequality. Because if you don't know, the overturning of Roe v. Wade is the court case Dobbs versus Jackson's Women's Health Organization, and they overturn Roe v. Wade, which is the right that we have given to get an abortion. So they decided to give that to democracy and not set a federal standard for that, which allows states to set that standard now. And there's been a lot of debate about that. Again, I have a cold. I don't know if I said that, but I do have a cold. So if I sniffle, I am very sorry. And I'm also going to be looking right here a lot because I'm reading the article so that I don't mess up any of the stuff that I want to quote. So the article references, I also have my whiteboard here with a bunch of the talking points I wanted to talk about. So the first part of the article talks about how they reversed Roe versus Wade and left it over to democracy, which turns into American federalism because now states are setting the standard for how long that ban should be, if there should be a ban, if they should allow it or not, based on their state. And Republicans are really surprised by this because they went into it trying to reverse Roe v. Wade with the thought that there was going to be a lot of people backing them, and unfortunately, for them, there is not. There have been a lot of support for abortion rights because it's, again, our bodily autonomy. So, yeah. Polls show increasing support for abortion rights in all 50 states, with majorities in nearly all states, even deep red states, saying that abortion should be legal in all or most cases. And it talks about how Democrats who didn't want to talk about abortion are now running on it, and that Republicans are now struggling to talk about when exactly abortion is allowed to occur because there isn't exactly a lot of data to back like the beginning of a fetus, or when a fetus becomes a baby, or when they start to have feelings or pain or anything like that. Like, there isn't concrete evidence from like all medical professionals, you know? Everybody has different things to say on it. So now that Republicans aren't getting as much backing as they'd like, they're trying to make it harder for people who are voting on it to pass those things. It talks about how they want to eliminate that option for people, and they're even starting to do so by, let me just take this off. Now they're starting to do that by even trying to take abortion pills off the market, which is like Plan B. And that, well, the conclusion of the article, it talks about how American Supreme Court, which previously wanted to take a back seat on that decision by allowing states to do it, now decided they want to take the case, which is something that before they had it talked about, because now that Republicans haven't realized that they're getting the backing that they want, they've decided that they want Congress to pass a uniform law instead of allowing all the states to decide when abortion should happen. So they ended talking about how for 2024, which is this year, it's going to be like the defining issue for people that we vote for, because at least for women, we talk or very strongly believe in that issue. I think it's something that's like, our bodily autonomy is really important to us, and to have it taken away in any aspect is very, very disheartening. So I wanted to talk about it because it relates to the course in that it has a lot to do with gender inequality. We don't really have a case where a man's like bodily right, the right to his body even, which would be the I feel like a good comparison would be like a vasectomy. There's nothing about a vasectomy anywhere that a man can't get one, or that they can't do anything like that, or that they should do anything like that. When there is stuff for women, it's just something that's not exactly fair and is an example of inequality. And my reaction to reading it was that it's not exactly surprising that Republicans now are going a different route. Just because in the past year, everybody's talked about it, and it's not exactly something that we hear a lot of people necessarily advocating for that abortion, because there are many different reasons to have one. Sometimes babies have anencephaly, which is like they are growing without a brain and they can't function. There are many symptoms where women can't give birth to a baby because it wouldn't be a baby. They're born without limbs, they're born without brains, they're born without hearts, they're born with hearts on the outside of their bodies. Like, pregnancy is a very risky thing. So to have that right taken away and to have to continue the gestational period knowing that your baby is not going to survive is something that's, it's something that doctors can't exactly look at and say, no, you have to keep this baby inside of you. So for me, it's just something that is not surprising, because it's not exactly what's expected of women to not want to fight for our bodily autonomy. And I think it's also surprising that, well, it's not surprising, sorry, that Republicans aren't getting that backing in the way that's they were expecting a lot of other people to do it. I'm trying to say it in a way that's different from my last point, but kind of how they weren't expecting so many. I mean, women make up, according to multiple statistic sites, about 49% of the world, and that's almost half. So of course there's going to be pushback on that. And then you also have, according to Planned Parenthood, 1 in 4 women have an abortion by the age of 45. So it's not uncommon. And that is, it's just stuff that's like things that we have the right to. And I think that the article specifically connects to the course because we're talking a lot about things that aren't equal, even in our discussion thing with Ain't I a Woman by Sojourner Truth. She says, then that little man in black there, he says women can't have as much rights as men because Christ wasn't a woman. Where did your Christ come from? Where did your Christ come from? From God and a woman. Man had nothing to do with him. If the first woman God ever made was strong enough to turn the world upside down all alone, these women together ought to be able to turn it back and get it right side up again. And that's something that's like, women have to fight for their rights. They have to fight for their right to have bodily autonomy and to decide if they don't want to give birth to a baby, which is a right that we have. It's not necessarily something that we all agree with, but I think that we should all have the right to choose. And sorry, that was my arm. And not having that right is a big problem because the same isn't being done for men. And that's where the unfair part comes from. There are just simply so many cases with abortion that aren't just about a woman who doesn't want to have a baby. Sometimes it's not about that. And I think it's something that delves into a deeper level because it starts affecting everything. I mean, not having access to Plan B, which is basically not even being allowed to prevent pregnancy, is something that's a really big part of bodily autonomy, because that's making the conscious decision to not want a baby in the first place and taking the necessary preventative measures and not being allowed to do that. It's just something that should be a right. And it was up until 2022. So I think that with the article, it's definitely shining a really big light on how women aren't going to sit back and allow what is our right, even if we don't choose to have it ourselves. But what is women's right to have, you know? We've fought for rights for so long. We've had so many reforms for women, and it's not surprising that we would start fighting for it again, because that's what we've always done. So I just wanted to share it because I think it's really prominent with votings coming up, and talk about both sides, both Democratic and Republican, and the Democrats are now using it as their voice, so, for their elections. So